Good morning and welcome to the BCP Cabinet meeting for January, and Happy New Year to everybody that's joining us. First of all, I need to read out a housekeeping notice where this meeting is online effectively. Note that meeting is being recorded by the Council for live broadcast and will be published on the Council website for a minimum of 6 months. In order to ensure the meeting is managed effectively, please could everyone present follow these ground rules for speaking. Only invited to by myself as chairman. State your name before you speak if you have not been introduced by name. Some people may need to dial into the meeting and will therefore not have the benefit of the visual. Mute your microphone when you are not talking. If you would like to speak, please use the raise your hand facility in Teams. If there is any recommendations moved that require a formal vote, these will be carried out by myself as chairman, asking for or against or abstention from each councillor on the cabinet. Finally, please ensure background noise is kept to a minimum as far as possible and mobile phones and other devices are turned off or switched to silent for the duration of the meeting. Thank you. Okay, everyone, so then we move into agenda item 1, apologies, made aware of any. Do we have any apologies?
None received, Chairman.
Thank you very much. That's great. So we move to item number 2, declarations of interest. Do any members of the committee of interest? I've got Councillor Kelly and then I'll bring in Councillor Slade. Jane.
Thank you, Leader. Yes, I just wanted to say that this is with relevance to item 12 on the agenda. I'm a governor at a different ambition school, so it's a slightly tense there. Thank you.
Thank you, Anne. Noted. That's great. Councillor Slade, Vicky.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm obviously only in attendance, but do want to declare an interest for item 12. My husband works at St Aldham's Academy and is employed by the Ambitions Academy. Okay,
thank you very much. Councillor Susan Zeiss, our monitoring officer, can I bring you in, please?
Thank you, Leader. I just want decision makers need to declare interest in this meeting because they are the ones who will be affected by any interests. So it would only be cabinet members who really need to declare because others will not be making decisions.
Yeah, thank you very much. I had a brief conversation with Democratic Services earlier, but that's great to have clarity. Okay, so then that moves us on to agenda item for confirmation of minutes, which we've all seen. I'm not intending to go through them line by line, page by page. So does anybody have any comments on them? But before we go to that, I'll propose to Councillor Broadhead to second them.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Happy to second the minutes.
Thank you very much. So do we have any comments on the minutes? I'm not seeing anybody raise, so I'll take that forward as unanimous approval. Great, and we will move forward to agenda item 4, which is public issues. I haven't been advised of any public questions, statements or petitions received on this occasion, so we will be moving to agenda item 5, which is recommendations from the Overview and Scrutiny Board. Councillor Bartlett, are there any recommendations you want to bring forward that aren't in the paper, the papers in front of us?
No, there's not, Leader. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That's great. To agenda item 6 and the first of our reports, and this is the mid-year corporate performance. I'm actually taking us through that paper, and I'm very pleased to present it as I think it should be a really tool for us as a cabinet and indeed for the wider membership and and the ONS board, which looked at it in some detail. It should be a really useful tool going forward. We're all very used to the paper, but I just thought, as a relatively new administration, I wanted to raise the point that it's about looking now, making this shaping into the type of areas we're actually looking to prioritise. And as with any KPI monitoring piece of work, it's only as good as the questions within it. It's for us as members to make sure that we're happy with the areas of focus, the questions we're asking, and I welcome comments, as we did from the Overview and Scrutiny Committee. I welcome comments from Cabinet in terms of what's here and the questions we're asking. It's also only as good as the data that's in it, and this will become stronger over time. What we have issues both with it being the first year we've actually had comparable data to monitor against, because we're now in year 2 of BCP. And obviously, the longer the period you're reflecting against, the stronger the comparison. And obviously the data for this year is materially affected by COVID. It has been a year like no other. Resultantly, there are a number of exception reports we'll have seen in the paper. Very happy to take questions. We had a good discussion of this with ONS, and one of the main areas ONS talked about was the planning effectively. So, and I was very pleased to take some more member support in terms of the direction of travel and how. Before we move on to anybody who'd like to speak on this paper, I'll ask for a second in Councillor Broadhead.
Yes, thank you very much, Chair. Happy to second the paper, and a barometer of how we're performing among key areas. And this is quite an exceptional year because of the impact of COVID on so many of our areas. Just with regards to the planning situation, because I'm the cabinet portfolio holder for that area, it's very clear that COVID in particular has had an impact on planning, which has resulted in a not area. Clearly that needs to be dealt with, but also we have a planning function which needs some significant investment to bring it up to the scale that we really need to be actioning in the future. And on that, we have a very clear action plan that is currently in progress, and so I can assure members that that is in hand and being taken a priority. And also, without saying too much, because we've got the budget coming up in only a month or two, but there will be some significant resource going into the planning function as well to deal with this. So it's great to have these reports. It flags up areas. It's something that we all knew about anyway, because planning is one of those functions that, as well as people's own applications as well. But it's something we're taking very seriously and in motion at the moment, and significant resource on the way. So I thought I'd just mention that, but other than that, happy to second the report. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Councillor Broadhead. OK, so this did go to overview and scrutiny. There weren't any formal recommendations from it. Before I bring in any other councillors and cabinet, I'll just ask Councillor Bartlett, was there anything you wanted to raise from ONS on this paper?
No, thank you, Leader.
Thank you very much. That's great. So we don't have any other councillors who have wish to speak. So do any members of cabinet wish to comment on the paper? OK, yeah, thank you very much. Getting a few now. So Councillor Haynes, May.
Thank you very much. A couple of quick comments on page 31, and in particular is the ones that have been flagged as red: safety levels, antisocial behaviour. Pleasing to see that that is actually in a downward trend, but obviously been impacted to a certain extent by COVID and the lockdown, etc., etc. And my comment on that is to say that while the trend is actually down, which is welcome, we in communities are being complacent that this is still keeping our finger on the button to keep that down trend pattern going. And then the next line below, which is the serious violent crime, again the number has actually gone down compared to the previous quarter end for the previous year. But again, same situation here. We are aware that because of lockdown, that perhaps people's attitudes are slightly different, but then we're also aware that because people are now indoors a lot more, that it could actually lead to more issues of violent crime. So again, we are very vigilant on that fact, and not going to be complacent just because the numbers are indicating that there is a downward trend. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, May. That's really useful, and thank you for your leadership in that area. Very important. OK, I've got Councillor.
Yeah. Thank you, Chair. Sorry, just started coughing just as you brought me in. I'd just like to make a couple of comments on the fulfilled. If you look at the top measure, which is about adult care services rated good or outstanding by CQC, you'll see that there's no data available. And this is because, obviously, because of COVID, this has been suspended. But I'm confident that good and outstanding services, and once the service is picked up again, then I'm sure that we'll be pleased to hear more about those. Going to the adults with a learning disability, there are 2 here which were red and now green. In receipt of support and services in employment and in settled accommodation. And I'm really, really pleased about the improvement in both of those areas, really important areas, and really good to see. Now, there is an exception report, and that is on carers services. So exception report, people can read it for themselves, but I just want to say that it's a really tough time for carers. We all know that it's a tough time for everybody, but it's a very tough time for carers who may be not having respite or having to shield, and so there is a reason why we have an exception report on this. I just want to make it absolutely clear that if a carer is in need of a service, then they will get one, and they need to get in touch with us. So please do. And finally, Chair, I just wanted to mention the adult safeguarding. So despite the pandemic, despite all the pressure on services, we are still achieving really good results in adult safeguarding. And it's not only holding up, but it's exceeding. And I think that's something to be to really take note of at the moment. And I think that's probably it for me. Thank you, Chair.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Karen, and it just goes without saying, doesn't it, to all our thanks goes out to our amazing officers who are doing a significant amount of work across your directorate at this time, and have been doing for a considerable amount of time. Thank you very much. Okay, I'll bring in Councillor Mike White. Mike.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. I want as indicators. I mean, as you can see, in general terms, they're fairly positive, although there are a couple of exception reports. But the point I really wanted to make is that these indicators actually fail to identify or give early warning of the Ofsted issues that we're currently grappling with. And I think members generally will be aware that we're currently reviewing all our measures at a corporate level. And I simply wanted to make the point, I've therefore asked that we do ensure that the basket of measures going forward for children's services will allow us to pick up these kind of Ofsted related issues in the future. Thank you, Chairman.
Yeah, thank you, Mike. And it's a really important point, isn't it? It's sort of reference back to the introduction. These have to be relevant measures that we're checking against, don't we? So there's a responsibility going forward from us and senior officers to really check in that they're doing what we need them to do. So I'm really glad we're going to be reviewing the children's services ones to get them more outcome Ofsted focused. So thank you very much for leading that, Mike. Okay, I don't have any other cabinet members wishing to speak, so I believe it's this item is for decision. So we're noting the mid-year report. We've considered the exception reports, and we're to advise of any amendments, deletions, additions there. So in terms of it being for decision, do I have any members wishing to do anything other than approve this item? I don't see that, so I'm very happy to take that forward as unanimous approval. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Cabinet. So that moves us on to agenda item 7, which is the council tax base paper. Again, this is a paper we'll all be, very used to, having seen it, every year. It goes without saying it's a very technical paper, setting out the council's tax base for 21-22. It's broken down into predecessor authorities, which is something we're still going to have to do until we get to harmonisation, which we'll be doing very shortly. We still have to do this in the background in terms of making sure the parish tax bases are accounted for effectively. One thing just to flag out of this paper, other than the details in there, and it is technical. It is the first time in pretty much, it's certainly in my memory, I believe our finance officers, working memory, the first time the actual tax base has gone down, to go up with growth effectively, and have done every year for a while. Just to highlight to Cabinet, that is because the council tax support claimants this year have risen 13.1%. Which is not unexpected in terms of but it is extreme, and it is a unusual one-off, and for interest that equates to £3.4 million. I'm leading this paper, so I'll propose it, and again I look to Councillor Broadhead to second.
Yes, thank you very much, Chair. As you mentioned, a largely bureaucratic paper. Happy to second. Thank you.
Thank you very much. This item wasn't considered by review and scrutiny, so Councillor Bartlett, please raise if you'd like to speak to it. Otherwise, I'll have no other councillors wishing to speak on it. So I'll wonder if Cabinet, anybody from Cabinet would like to speak on it. If not, I will look to anybody any objections to moving forward positively with this paper. No, so I'll take that forward as a unanimous acceptance of the recommendation. Great. Okay, so that moves us on to agenda item 8, which is setting a really important piece of work, setting up the BCP Cultural Compact. And I'll look to Councillor Mohan Iyengar to lead us through this paper. Mohan.
Okay, thank you, Chair, and good morning, everyone. I'm delighted to be adopting and taking forward, championing the cultural inquiry as was, and now the cultural compact and the strategy going forward. Many of you will know what this is about. In case anybody doesn't know what this is about, a national initiative championed by the Arts Council and by any others on across a broad stage across the UK to regenerate, to give a major push behind arts, cultural expression in all its forms. This is cities, and there's no presumption there about us being a city, but it's either cities or groups of towns of a decent size coming together to really put some sort of focus and put some momentum behind developing cultural expression. And we're delighted in BCP to be, thanks to the previous administration and now us to carry it on, is to be actually in one of the front-running groups in the UK taking this forward. So let's keep that pace up. There are 3 recommendations in front of you, Cabinet. One is to accept the 3-year package of investment, the compact and the strategy going forward. Secondly, to agree the report and the recommendations of the cultural group. And the third one is to agree that the compact will embody the council's inclusivity, diversity principles. I'll just say a little bit in this, and I'm joined here on Cabinet by Councillor Dunlop and also by Councillor Williams. So I'll say a little bit and then let my colleagues also say a good deal as well. And a good deal can be said about this, but I will try and be short. This is not a small niche piece of work. This is a very large piece of work. And culture is a word that can mean many things to many people, but how it is that it actually touches everything. It touches everything and it touches everyone. What we do, where we go, where we live, etc., etc. Particularly what this cultural compact is going to be delivering is, first of all, a structure involving partners across artists, educators, health, leisure, business and government to be thinking about what can we implement and to actually be delivering things across 21-22 and in the years ahead. It will also deliver that through an entity which is linked to the council but separate to the council, and I think in a way that will be, without doing ourselves down too much, I hope that will be a reassurance to people to actually get involved in this, which is it's something which will have council support, but actually it will in a sense be free from the council and be free thinking and will frankly do what needs to be done without, let's say, the overdues, the overbearing sort of pressure from the council to be pulled a certain way. The third thing is the people it will have in it, and what we're looking to attract to the compact, to the discussions in it, is the widest possible range of people, and not just wide in terms of numbers, but wide in terms of the different types of people. And you know, we've all got our view on that, the different types of people that represent BCP, all of our nearly 400,000 people. And the final thing is it will develop a plan very quickly about what it is we are implementing. And the final thing I'll say is that what is it exactly is going to be implemented is that probably from the most tangible thing, which is events and an events programme, and particularly my colleague Councillor Dunlop will say more about this, an events programme. The second thing is understanding how can we foster the organisations, groups and particularly networks of people to enable ideas to flourish, to happen. And then the third thing, and probably on the longer burn, is how can we make strong intervention in the way we curate our open spaces, our parks, our venues, our cultural venues, taking a multi-year view so that actually we're putting a very, very strong foundation behind all this to happen in BCP. We want to be very, very strong in BCP in this expression and be a national leader, and it starts right from here. So once again, credit to the work that has been done in the previous administration for taking this forward, and I'm very, very happy to champion this going forward. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Mohan, and some really excellent work going into the paper. I'll technically second the paper and then bring in Beverly.
Thank you. I think nowhere will we see the ethos of the Cultural Compact in action better than in the cultural events programme, because there's going to be a step change in how we develop events as part of our cultural vision. So the 3 legacy councils had programmes, they have events, but I think they've probably grown organically without a theme underpinning them or being part of a connected programme. But we know they deliver, but sort of what's the cultural benefit? Why? Whom do they serve? So going forward, the BCP events programme will be underpinned by culture, whether that's an established event or one to be developed. It'll incorporate the big festivals and events right down to the community level. So as Councillor Iyengar said, our vision is to engage everyone in cultural activity, break down those barriers that prevent this and ensure every resident can engage in some kind of event. And the paper before you, I hope, dispels this idea once and for all that, you know, maybe the definition of culture is going to the theatre, watching a ballet, visiting a museum, or listening to a certain piece of music. All the events we currently run have cultural value and satisfy a demographic. Pool Pirates Day, Christchurch Food Festival, they're all cultural events. Bournemouth's Christmas Tree Festival is great fun, but its roots are, of course, in Christianity. Thousands of people, whether they're Christian or not. But the question is, what do we do for Diwali or Hanukkah? We've a great pride event, you know, but what's there for our disabled residents, our elderly, our young, our black and minority ethnic residents, our non-Christian residents? A variety of languages are spoken across BCP. We have a lot of cultural diversity. Where's that represented in our events? You know, cultural activity has different values to different people, but a food festival has no less cultural value than a performance of La Film Garde. A celebration of Caribbean art, music and culture has no less value than Henry V. And I might say a rap and reggae weekend has no less cultural value than Turandot. And things that I want everyone to consider. A disabled performer has no less value than an abled one, and the same must apply for black and ethnic minorities, those of different faiths and sexualities. And we have to ensure that everyone can engage in that cultural events programme. You know, age, colour, religion, nationality, ability, disadvantage and poverty must not be a barrier to taking part. So, I don't know, some wild ideas. Would our Brazilian community, for example, like to work with us on a carnival? Would our residents from Eastern Europe like to work with us to develop a celebration of their culture? Every resident should be able to look at our events programme and some aspects of it, and it means something to them. And those outside the conurbation should be able to look at BCP as the place to visit, partly because of our amazing events programme. It's fun, different, and it's diverse. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much both. I mean, that's just I'll bring other people in, but that's just a hugely refreshing, you know, and energy and vibrancy from both of you. There's obviously a huge amount of work in this, and it's one of those massive BCP opportunities, isn't it, to get that real step change and ambition. So huge thank you. It's exciting. Okay, so let me. I don't believe we had any formal recommendations from ONS, but Councillor Barlow, was there anything you want to bring on this paper?
Only that the committee were very enthusiastic in supporting this paper as a benefit that will bring to the quality well-being of our residents. So, yeah, very much behind this. Thank you.
Yeah, great. And it's also worth reflecting, Steve, as well as that the you know, energy that's gone into it as well. So and that's certainly welcome. Okay, so I'll now bring in our arts champion, who is Lawrence Williams, to comment on the paper. I believe Lawrence is here. So, Councillor Williams, Lawrence.
Thank you. I wear two hats really. I'm also a member of the Arts Council in the Southwest, and I have to say that the Arts Council, when I spoke to the director last week, are very enthusiastic about this and fully supportive. When I was Mayor of Bournemouth a few years ago, I realised how diverse Bournemouth was in particular, and of course Christchurch and Poole as well. I met all these communities that Councillor Dunlop mentioned. In fact, I know that they would welcome a diversity festival or festivals, because at the time they told me so. And I think that this will lead to much bigger things in the long run, but I'm very supportive of the paper. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Lawrence. It's really helpful. Other of the wider membership raising to speak now, so I'll bring in our cabinet colleagues. If any of our cabinet colleagues like to speak on this paper? Okay, so I'm not seeing anyone, so I'll move us forward. Oh, sorry, I do apologise. Councillor Brooks, Nigel.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I certainly very much welcome this paper. As you know, I work with you as Cabinet Plus for Retail Strategy, and in February we will, I hope, be looking at retail strategy and proposals in that area. And much of what's in this proposal, looking at some of the ideas for events, this will be a major part of actually regeneration as we come through COVID-19, to actually just bring people together and feel safe, but also to enjoy our towns across the conurbation. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely, Councillor Brooks. It's an entirely part of a regenerative process, isn't it? So appreciate that. I've got Councillor Jane Kelly and then Nicola Greene. Jane. Jane, I'm not hearing you, so if you would like to just...
Sorry. So as lead member for community engagement, I would also like to endorse this paper before us. It shows how we can bring the arts and its to every member of our really diverse communities. There are paragraphs in here which highlight the benefits of engagement in any form of creativity, whether taking part or watching, volunteering in our lovely parks and gardens, helping others who need support, joining with like-minded friends in social networks, and many other examples, both high. These are often people who think that they aren't included in the arts and culture scene, but with the philosophy described here, they absolutely are. The health and well-being of our residents can and will be lifted by our understanding of cohesion can be enhanced by the inclusive nature of a cultural compact, as described here. The strength and resilience of our population is absolutely imperative as we emerge from the current pandemic. And I feel that following the principles in the recommendations here will support that outcome immensely. I'm grateful and thank the portfolio holder and the lead member who have worked on this so hard, for in our BCP area, culture is for everyone to embrace in whatever way each individual feels comfortable doing so.
Thank you very much, Jane. Brilliant. Councillor Greene, Nicola.
Thank you, Chairman. I'd like to add to Councillor Kelly's point in thanking the portfolio holder and the lead member as well for giving us permission to use the word culture. I think sometimes it's one of those words we're a little bit frightened of and think that it does mean something highbrow or that it's exclusive in some sense. And the entirely embracing inclusivity that's been spoken about today has been so refreshing, so welcoming, and I, for one, am deeply grateful to Councillor Dunlop for articulating what it is that we're setting out to do and to achieve through this. And I would dearly love to have what she said sitting by me as a crib sheet to give myself the freedom to talk about culture and know that it's for me and it's for everybody I talk to. So I just think this is such a welcoming paper to bring forward, and I really look forward to see the delivery that follows from it. And thank you to everyone.
Absolutely, and I'll add my endorsement to that as well. Entirely, I think it's incumbent on me to say that this administration is and will be absolutely committed to if we've got aspiration to be a world-class city region, you don't do that without a really inclusive and strong culture, and that's what we're going to be fully committed to. And very much look forward to working with portfolio holder, lead member, and Councillor Williams and the Arts Council in terms of how we can actually really drive that. So thank you everybody for your input. I'm not raised to speak, so I will. Councillor Iyengar has already described that this is 4 items for decision. So anybody who has any dissent, please show to me. Otherwise, I'll take that forward as a unanimous approval. Okay, not seeing anybody wishing to raise on that, so I will take that forward unanimously. Thank you everybody for your work on it. Okay, that moves us forward to item 9, which is bus operator reimbursement. Before I bring in Councillor Greene, I'll just mention that should it be, if we want to discuss the detail in Appendix A, we'll need to go into confidential exempt session. So please can all members be aware of that. Now very happy to hand over to Councillor Greene. Mike.
Thank you very much, Leader. Yeah, this paper is part of the National Concessionary Travel Scheme. All local authorities in the country make a payment to the bus companies or the bus operators within their areas, and that in normal years that payment is one that's made for if anyone who holds a bus pass as a member of the scheme boards a bus in that council area, and it's actually quite complicated, the calculations, but they are to ensure that the bus company is no better or no worse off than if that person did not hold a pass and had got on the bus. And what it does is obviously it encourages a much greater amount of bus use, and it allows bus operators to operate would not be viable. Although the calculations are complicated, they're also very predictable in normal years, costing the council the money that's given by the council to the local bus operators is somewhere in the region of about £1,000 a month. Of course, during COVID, the number of people boarding the bus has been considerably less, and that's very much the case for those who hold bus passes. At some stages, they've been down to around 15% or so of the pre-COVID levels. At others, they've been up to around 50 or 60%. In light of the difficulties that would be caused, to say the least, for bus operators who are already operating in line with their requirements as not for profit, the DFT, the Department for Transport, has recommended very strongly to all local authorities that they continue to provide the concessionary fare payment in the same way and at the same sort of level as they did in pre-COVID times. And evidence is that has been followed by every local authority in the country, and that we would be this paper proposes that we do exactly the same. There are 2 minor adjustments that get made. One is to reflect the overall shift in bus patronage, which has been down over the last 3 years by about just under 2% in this local authority area, and the other to reflect any services that have been provided by a specific operator during the COVID time compared with the previous year. And again, that's been taken into account, and the result is that there is a small budget saving. So this paper has recommendations. The first is the amount that should be paid for the period November to March, which covers the rest of the 2021 period. And the second is that regarding 21-22 and potentially onwards, that as local authorities we need to establish a recovery partnership, which will work work out where we go as we go forward. Assuming that that recommendation is passed, we've already got meetings planned with the bus operators starting next week, and the government has indicated that it will help financially to set up those recovery partnerships. As you've mentioned, Leader, the vast majority of the nuts and bolts of this is contained within the appendices, which are would need to be discussed under confidential arrangements. However, I think those appendices are really very clear, and I know that all my Cabinet colleagues have read those. We did discuss them also at overview and scrutiny, so I would hope that we're able to move on without having to need to go into that session, but obviously that will be up to colleagues. I'm hoping that my colleague, who is primarily responsible for COVID response, will at least formally second this paper. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mike. Great. Councillor Greene, Nicola.
Thank you, Chairman. In formally seconding the recommendations set out by my colleague who's responsible for transportation, I would indeed draw members' attention to the fact that this is yet another impact that this extraordinary year has had on services delivered by the council. You know, we're very clear, aren't we, about the public health, about the well-being issues that the impact has had on those services. But actually, and just in making that note, I'm very happy formally to second those recommendations.
Thank you very much, Nicola. That's appreciated. Okay, so this wasn't. I don't believe we've got any recommendations from overview and scrutiny. So, Councillor Bartlett, please, if you would like to address the committee on this. I don't have any other members wishing to speak from the while. I'll ask, do Cabinet colleagues have any comments they would like to make on the paper? Okay, not seeing anybody raising. So, Mike, thank you very much for bringing this to us. I'll move now to the decision, and yeah, this item is a recommendation, and we recommend that the current supports the CMC recommendation to approve the reimbursement of bus operators based on the adjusted pre-COVID levels, as urged by central government, and that Cabinet endorses the formation of a recovery partnership with the bus operators. We have that proposed and seconded. Anybody would like to speak in addition to that? I'm not seeing anybody, so we'll move forward as a unanimous support of that. So thank you very much. Okay, that moves us to item 10, which is the Dorset Heathlands interim air quality report, and that's brought to us by Councillor Philip Broadhead. Phil.
Yes, thank you very much, Chair. This is quite an interesting paper, actually. Colleagues will remember last month we brought a not dissimilar paper, which was also talking about mitigating ecological impacts which are caused by new development in the area. And last month we were talking about the added nitrates that were entering Poole Harbour from agriculture, but also through the sewerage system from an increase in new homes, and how we could mitigate that through using still money to address the problem. This is a very, very similar strategy, but actually addressing some of the problems that we have with our heathlands in the area. And what's happened is Natural England have objected to several major planning applications in the area because they've noticed that airborne nitrogen and ammonia gases from many different sources, but predominantly agriculture, but also new developments and homes, can settle on the soil in heathlands, enrich the soil, and really massively disrupt the ecology. So they're concerned about this, and they're concerned that we need to do in the short term. The reason that's caused a problem, of course, is as we've got housing targets to fill, and we've got new homes coming in the area. If Natural England object to something, we need to find a solution. But also, there's a bigger ecological picture, isn't there? If we see that there are problems developing, particularly around our natural environment and our heathlands, we've got to clearly do something about it, not just to build new homes, but to look after our environment as well. So what this paper does is it sets out a joint strategy that would be launching with Dorset County Council to try and address this issue. It's not a long-term solution because actually there's a lot of thinking behind this, that the long-term solution actually might well present itself through the change in behaviour, particularly as people start to use electric cars. That will mitigate the problem, and as we've all seen, that electric car use has been accelerating, and there is a real evidence that by 2030 a lot of this problem should well have gone away, but we've got to meet the challenge until then. And to date, we've been kind of in a position where the major applications and the major developers are having to come up with their own solutions on a piecemeal basis, and quite clearly that causes problems. We're not joined up on all of this, but also it doesn't really resolve the problem in a much bigger way, and that's why we've come up with this joint strategy with Dorset to use some SIL money to try and address the problem. And just to be really clear, what we're talking about here is it's not major developments that are necessarily right next to Heathland. It's the added car journeys in particular that major developments may bring through areas where the road goes through the Heathland, and actually to either side of where those roads are and the added car journeys are where we are seeing the slight issues with the Heathland. So this isn't a very, very detailed plan of exactly what we're going to do, but it is the beginning of that journey for a 5-year mitigation, a range of mitigation projects, again, in collaboration with our colleagues in Dorset Dorset Council, to try and actually fix this problem in the short term, with the hope that bigger solutions will come, mainly through change of how we get around in the future. One thing to note, actually, as part of this, it did actually, to try and show that these things are a little bit joined up, it actually caused us to make some changes to the document that we took through last SPD around parking standards. And colleagues will note that we made an extra recommendation in there that all new homes in the area, and when I say homes, I mean particularly houses, will have to have an electric car charging point in the future. And again, that is trying to drive that situation forward, so that if people are in these slightly out of town developments where car use is still very much needed, that we help as much as possible to shift that modal shift to electric car use as well, which is already coming, which will help with this problem by emissions for non-electric vehicles. So the detail is in there. I've got a seconder in Councillor Mike Greene, who largely deals with the infrastructure side of things, but this is about a short-term 5-year strategy to enable us to work with our colleagues in the neighbouring authority to try and get ahead of this, so that it really unlocks the major developments that are needed in the area, and also tries to come up with a solution that's a much more joined up way. Thank you, Chair.
Yeah, thank you very much. Councillor Greene, Mike.
Yeah, thank you, Leader. I'll be very brief in seconding this. As you can see from the report, and particularly from the draft, road transport accounts for 8% of the nitrogen deposits onto Heathland, and that's clearly a significant element that we want to try to address. And as Councillor Broadhead has pointed out, there are two ways that we. One is a shift to electric vehicles, and again, Councillor Broadhead has spoken about some of the moves that we've already made, and I believe that we will be able, over the course of this 5 years, this 5-year period, to be announcing more. But secondly, also in encouraging the modal shift away from the private car. We've all been seeing some of the measures that have been taking place at the moment within the BCP area, and I would expect that the Transforming Travel programme is the one that's really going to accelerate things. That's proposing or trying to encourage a modal shift towards all sustainable methods of transport, public transport, cycling and walking. There is a modest amount of money that's being put aside, this 750,000 over the course of the next 5 years, or of the 20 to 25. And as Councillor Broadhead has pointed out, and the paper does, these are coming from civil contributions, developed contributions. How 50,000 is going to be part of the work as we go forward, and the manager of the programme, we should get better ideas as to how to do so. And as those details come through, I'm sure that within all of our portfolio, we look forward to being able to announce them and show what a difference they're going to make. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, both. That's really great and exciting that we're moving that forward. I don't believe this item went to overview and scrutiny, so Councillor Bartlett, please raise if you'd like to address us, as with any other member of Council. Not seeing anybody raising, so I will Cabinet colleagues if they would like to address us on it. Councillor Anderson, Mark. So Mark.
Thank you, Leader. I'm very happy to support this. I think it's an excellent proposal to try and recover heathlands. As you know, I've spoken in favour of our ecological emergency and making sure that we maintain and enhance the heathlands that make this area so special. So I'm very happy that we are doing this sort of work, and we'll continue to support.
Fantastic. Okay, thank you very much. I don't have anybody else showing to speak. So this item is for recommendation. We've got in the papers A to D. So I won't read those out. Does anybody wish to speak in dissent to any of those recommendations? Then I'm happy to take that forward as a unanimous decision of Cabinet, which is great. So thanks for the work on this, Phil and Mike, and we'll look forward to seeing that develop. Okay, so we move now on to agenda item 11, which is the Freeport bid. Again, Phil, Councillor Broadhead.
Yes, thank you very much, Chair. Really pleased to be bringing this forward, and thank you to Councillor Bartlett and all of the Overview and Scrutiny Board for looking at this in some detail last week at the Overview and Scrutiny Board, where we actually had a really good discussion on how we take this forward. As it spells out in the paper, I think we need to be really clear about what this is, and this is round one. This is really phase one of an expression of interest in, do we want to be considered as part of the government's new push to create a number of free ports across the country. And it's quite clear that there are a lot of benefits to being a free port. It opens up a lot of options and a lot of different parts of the economy. And also, as the government have expressed in their paper launching this, there's a number of benefits that come to the local authority as well, such as business rate, local business rates retention, and really using it as a massive platform. So I think it's completely right that we put our hat in the ring to try and be considered for one of the government's new free ports, because this is a really big push from national government. One of the things that we explored in the Overview and Scrutiny Board was, what would this mean for our authority, and what pitch would we make in terms of being a free port here? Because I think one of the things that alarmed is that when you think of a free port and you think of those that would be the natural fit for this, you think of very large industrial areas with very low relations, lots of in and out, more kind of freight based. And of course, we're not like that here. We are not of the scale that you would see in a place like a Liverpool, for instance. However, I think this is actually pretty central to the pitch that we are going to be making to the government. There are lots of different areas, and lots of different areas have different ways in terms of how their businesses and their economy work. And actually, one of the things that we do major on is being very smart, very digitally, and we've got a scale which is much more manageable than a lot of other ports in the area. So the very central pitch that we'll be making to government is that we would be looking to market ourselves as quite a bespoke, smart free port, and try and very much lead in terms of how a port of the 21st century can and should be. And that's really the pitch that we're putting forward. As I mentioned, this is the expression of interest stage at the moment, so it's very much a kind of a vision of what kind of initial envision yourself to be, and the paper here is really giving permission for that piece of work to go through from a final submission point of view. There is an allocation of around £50,000 at this stage to put this forward, and I think it's also worth, we are not doing this alone. We're working really closely with a number of partners, notably the Rigby Group, who are the owners of the International Airport. And again, that International Airport is really one of the central pieces of our pitch for a free port. Of course, we've got Poole Harbour as well, and been working with Poole Harbour commissioners, and the fact that we've got that harbour, that Poole kind of seaport harbour, but also a major international airport hub as well, means that we do have something different in our bid as well. So happy to take any questions of this. We've spent an hour and a half of this on scrutiny as well, and I thank you all the colleagues for looking at it there. But just to reiterate, this is the first pitch. This is, what do we want to be part of it? What do we want our Freeport bid to look like? And I'm confident that we have a pitch that may well catch the eye of government. Thank you, Chair.
Yeah, thank you, Phil. And I'm really excited where you sort of ended that was around a lot of the partnership working. And you know, one of the ambitions of ours has been to really re-engage that wider economic, and it's been exciting to be in some of those conversations, and there's a real energy there now. So so thank you very much for bringing that forward. I'm happy to formally second the item. For me, it's a marked step change in ambition, isn't it? You know, we're saying we want to be on the map. You know, we are a city region the same size as Bristol, and now let's start being confident and addressing, you know, externally we are a place of that scale and ambition. For me, I think there's an absolute economic imperative to be trying to move things like this forward, because as we come out of this pandemic, you know, we are in a recession, and it's our job as leaders to make sure we're absolutely addressing that and bringing forward the economy and in any way, shape or form we can. I've made the point previously, but I was delighted that Conor Burns was able to facilitate 5 minutes for me to press this with the Chancellor, Councillor Rishi Sunak, which was great. And you know, he was really keen to be talking about BCP as a region, and was very close to the LGR process in a previous iteration. So it's great to get on that ministerial stage, and I think we need to be doing more of that. For this and for other iterations would be really beneficial. So yeah, delighted to support it, and thank you for the energy you're bringing to it, Phil. Okay, this did go, as you've alluded, at some length to overview and scrutiny. I don't believe there are formal recommendations, but it was a very strong and interesting debate. Councillor Bartlett, would you like to address the committee on that? If I'm not seeing that, Councillor Bartlett, Steve.
Yeah, nothing really to add to that, other than obviously an exciting time, and just wish you well with the bid, because this is important, and we just wish you well with it.
Thank you very much. Thank you. And yeah, it was just a really good opportunity to have at length, in detail discussion with overview and scrutiny. So so that was great. Okay, so I'm not seeing any other councillors from the wider membership wishing to speak. Please raise if you do. Yes, great. I've got Councillor Slade. Vicky.
Thank you very much for that. I just wanted to just input a couple of things following the very detailed discussion that we had at overview and scrutiny. And absolutely, you know, everything we can do to get this area on the map is a good thing. I do have a little bit of a concern about the objectives of the free port, about establishing them as national hubs for global trade, promoting regen and job creation, and creating hotbeds of investment. I'm just wondering, it says in the bidding process that bids have to reflect and are asked to tackle their weaknesses. And I'm just interested in what the portfolio holders' view is on how we're tackling the weaknesses of our area in order to achieve that. So that's my first question. The second thing I just wanted to ask is phrase about the other bids which ports were expected to have engaged with. That was the Green Energy Fund and the Port Infrastructure Fund. I wonder whether the portfolio holder have been able to find out from the Port of Poole if they had applied, because it was indicated in the bidding process that that was something which would be factored into the scoring process. And I also wondered if we had established what the value of import-export already is, and what they would expect the increase to be if we get the free port. Final thing, I just really feel it's really important to stress. There was a lot of talk at overview and scrutiny about the fact that the reason the council are being asked to pay £50,000 for this is because, you know, the private sector organisations were cross with us that we didn't take it forward in the previous administration, and therefore we were having to pay for it. I completely object to that. And I've been through every single minutes and agendas for every board meeting of the LEP from May 2019. And the word Freeport was not mentioned by any member of the LEP in 18 months. So at no point did these key partners and stakeholders, including themselves, raise it as something they wanted to progress. It's not part of the list, the local infrastructure strategy. And so I just whilst I think it's great that there's that ambition there, I really think it's important that you don't give the impression that we were being dragged kicking and screaming by partners and that we didn't want to do it. We didn't want to do it, I accept that, but nor did anybody else. There was not an appetite within the LEP to push this forward from any of the partners prior to the last couple of months. And that's great if you've persuaded them, but I just think it's important that the impression isn't given that other people were asking for it, because they weren't.
Thank you very much. To respond to that, I'll see. Are there any other wider council members wishing to speak on this? Which I've got. I'll bring Cabinet in after we've heard from these members. Steve, so I'll bring Councillor Barron. So I'll bring you in next. Okay, so then thank you very much. I'll hand over to Phil now. I think it's worth me just having one comment on that. Thank you very much, Vicky. Because I was in all my meetings, and my first meeting with the Rigby Group, with the LEP and with Poole Harbour Commissioners, there was significant interest, and this was discussed at the first meeting of all of those. I guess from my perspective, it's about giving one of the jobs of this leadership and this administration is to project confidence to our partners that we want to be engaged with effectively. And if the fact that it was on the first item of agenda, anything I spoke with those three parties, if that's effective, they've appreciated that this administration is more open to responding economically positively, then great, because that's I guess our duty. Now, Phil, in terms of responding more to the detailed points, I'll bring you back in, and then we'll go to the wider cabinet. Phil.
Yes, thank you, Chair, and thank you, Councillor Said, for your questions. I'll take them in order. One was around, well, look, as part of the expression of interest, we've clearly got to talk about what we're good at, but also what we're not good at. And I think that's in two parts. First of all, it's perhaps weaknesses that we have compared to other areas that are bidding. So it's how are other areas going to be better at the bid, or maybe look like that than we are. But also it's about areas that we maybe are a little bit weak on, and where the Freeport can have a real tangible difference on the ground. So I'll deal with that last one first. The government has been really clear in all of the discussions that we're having with them that they want front and centre of the benefits of the Freeport process to be about regeneration and jobs. This is not about necessarily looking at areas that are already doing very well in terms of being international ports or international hubs or all of that kind of thing, and just making them a little bit better. It's about using the process to be quite transformative in areas. And if I may, I would say that is actually where we potentially have a real strength compared to other areas. As I mentioned, we're not the scale of other areas that are considering Freeport status. But because of that, I think there's a very clear push that we can make a case for, that we can offer significantly more bang for the buck. So in terms of what we can achieve, if we have this opportunity, we have the ability to be a lot more nimble and a lot more impactful immediately than other areas. So actually, one of the things that we'll be looking at bringing out within the bid is, yes, of course, we can be a bit of a different Freeport, more fit for the 21st century, digital based, and using all of our high-speed connectivity and everything to look at how a port should be for the future, but also that we can really demonstrate that this will make a very tangible difference on the ground. And one of the central parts, as I mentioned earlier on, is the area around the international airport. It's pretty clear in the government's criteria that they will want to see the benefits of regeneration and development. We've got a lot of land regarding around the international airport. We've got a fantastic partner in the Rigby Group who are already flying to China, to America, and all of those kind of areas. And it's how can actually we use the Freeport status to maybe unlock better infrastructure in that area, unlock land, so that we can really make the most of what is a fantastic asset already there. So I think looking at the weaknesses in that regard, I think it's pretty clear that the bang for the buck could be very positive there. And then the other weakness is what weakness would we have compared to other areas? And as I've said, if you thought of a major international port, you probably wouldn't think of Bournemouth and Poole and Christchurch. But actually, we do a lot in this area already. And again, pitching it as something that is very different from the others, I think is a unique selling point rather than necessarily a weakness. All of those things will be drawn out in the expression of interest and then into the further business case. The second point, which was really about the detail, that is a piece of work that will come in two phases. First of all, as part of the decision today, this lets us progress to the kind of final detail within the initial expression of interest case, where we can look at the broad parameters of job creation and things like that. And it is broad because you have to, you can't do a tremendous amount of work within the time frame for that, and government aren't expecting it. Of course, if we do get through to the next amount of funds attached to that to do a much deeper piece of work, where we look at the tangible benefits for the area and the more detailed ones. So that will come later, but of course, as part of the expression of interest, as Councillor Slade points out, we will have to demonstrate in some level exactly what this means on the ground, and the partners that we're working with, and in particular Cushman and Wakefield, who are the ones that are preparing the bid for us, are doing that work as we speak. She asked why we're paying for this, and it's tied up to the point that you just made, Chair, which is that the last administration made a decision completely within their remit to do so, that they did not wish to pursue this. We now have a very time-limited opportunity to put this expression of interest forward, and frankly, the easiest way to do that is for us to put the money in. I think we're more than happy with that. It's not a tremendous amount of money to really get this underway. So it was a conscious decision from our point of view to say, let's fund this because we believe in this. And I think that ties into the last point, which is, well, why have we heard nothing about this from the LEP previously and the outside business? And it's precisely the point the leader just made. People look to the local authority to set the ambition and the optimism for the area. We have some partners in this that are really, really excited about this. The Rigby Group, the Harbour, the LEP now. And it's not that we've convinced them that actually this is a good idea. It's that we've unlocked and released them, and we're showing the leadership that perhaps was lacking before. So, of course, it is something it's within every gift of any administration to decide whether they would or would not like to bid for something. We came out with all guns on this one and said we can see the benefits of this. We want to lead from the front. And as soon as we demonstrated that leadership, all of the local businesses have rallied around this, and it's been really heartening to see the enthusiasm that people are putting into this, and there's a tremendous more work that we can do together. Final point from me, and it was raised from Councillor Bartlett, I think this is one that we really need to, in a cross-party way, all get behind. We are one of the largest urban authorities now in the country, and many of the coastal urban authorities are bidding for this as well, and they have cross-party support, and it would be really welcome if we got all the parties around and supporting this expression of interest, so that we can get the year of government, show that we're united, and show that we have a plan and ambition for the future. Thank you, Chair.
Yeah, great. Thank you very much, Phil. I'll move to questions from Cabinet. So I've got Baron, Steve.
Thank you, Leader. It's been a busy port for hundreds of years, and I for one am hugely excited what this could bring to the town. So I very much welcome the bid. I think it's very exciting and it's a very positive step forward. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Steve. And it is just that, isn't it? It is that, you know, step moving forward. So yeah, really pleased with that. Okay, I don't have anybody else looking to speak, so I will please raise now if you would like to. I will go to I think this is items for decision. And that is A to D in our report. So I won't read those out verbatim. So anybody who has any comment around any of those recommendations, please show. I look forward to take that as unanimous agreement. So thank you very much. Thanks for your work on this, Phil. It's really exciting. And thank you, Councillor Bartlett, for the engagement from overview and scrutiny. Okay, that moves us forward to agenda item 12, which is for St Aldham's capital investment to maintain capacity, which I believe is being brought to us by Councillor Nicola Greene. Nicola.
Thank you, Chairman. In thinking about what I was going to say today, I couldn't not start with I'm absolutely delighted to be bringing forward a capital investment in our schools. And I realise I have been saying that since I first joined the Cabinet in 2009, and I've said it as a non-executive member under the previous administration, but it is absolutely true. It's a real privilege to be bringing forward investment in our children's futures. There is no other way of of getting away from that, and I don't think I'd wish to. It's worth saying that some of our schools, and I use the word school to cover both the maintained schools and our academies, deliver outstanding education in facilities which are far less than outstanding. So it really is always nice bringing forward an opportunity to update the facilities in which our young people are learning. I'm especially keen to see this investment in St Aldham's, as it provides that absolute demonstration of confidence of the local community in its local school. And I'd like to thank the Academy leads ambitions for making this happen. The reason the school needs investment is that it is getting full. It's been the case with St Aldham's. Not least because we've seen a large number in a large increase in the number of young people we have across the borough, and there are still lower numbers at the top of St Aldham's, but increasingly the local are voting with their feet and sending their children into the school at year 7, and so the existing accommodation on site won't be sufficient for that to continue. So this proposal brings forward a modular building, which I always remind members is not how we remember the modular school buildings of our youth. They are by some really fantastic modern learning environment, and it will also obviously include the ancillary buildings, facilities and toilets too, which would be appropriate. It follows on from the work of the previous administration in making the temporary expansion possible for this year, and it will make that accommodation permanent. I have been in touch with all 3 ward councillors, and I thank them for their engagement. That's Councillor Trent, Councillor Maidment and Councillor Johnston. They're supportive of this, and I thank them for that. But they have quite understandably asked that they continue to be engaged as the finer details of this, and I'm very happy, having spoken with officers, to give them that commitment. The investment is funded, and that's to the £210,000 from basic need funding, which is there. It's an allocation from government, and it is there to provide additional places. But it's not just about buildings. I think I'd point out that all the predecessor organisations, the predecessor councils and the previous have used that basic need funding to lever in some real improvements rather than just putting buildings. So I know that money will be spent very wisely. I just think the providing this allocation demonstrates our commitment to the teachers and support staff, that we value their work, and that they will have some great new facilities for their work. But truly the most important thing is that we are making that commitment to young people, that their future is something that we believe in, and that the investment follows from that. Chairman, I seek a seconder. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Nicola. That's great. And I look to Councillor Mike White. Mike.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Chairman. I'm very happy to support this, and also as a previous pool lead member, I'd love to take this opportunity to congratulate the school on the real progress they've made in recent years. As I say, very happy to see you.
Yeah, thank you, Mike, and I'll endorse that as well. You know, as on the previous pool cabinet, we're well aware of the journey that school's effectively been on, and to see it coming forward, needing additional places, is a real encouragement, and you know, they should be rightly proud, the Ambitions Academy. So I'm glad we've been able. Okay, I don't believe this item was considered by ONS, so, and I haven't got any other non-cabinet members wishing to speak, so I'll go to cabinet colleagues. Would anybody like to address this paper? I'm not seeing anybody raising. This item is for decision, and so we're effectively improving that allocation there, which is great. If anybody would like to against or in relation to that recommendation, please do now. Not seeing anybody come forward, so take that forward as a unanimous support. Thank you very much, Nicola. That's really encouraging to be able to bring that one forward. So now we're back with you, Councillor Greene, in terms of the item 13, the determination of admission arrangements. So I'll hand over to you, Councillor Greene. Nicola.
Thank you again, Leader. This is, in a sense, takes us back to very close to the top of the agenda when we looked at setting the council tax base, in that it is a technical but a very important paper. It's one, if you don't do the next steps there, as we can't set a council tax if we don't have our council tax base, nor can we allow parents to apply for school places for their very youngest children if we don't set out the admissions criteria. Just to give a bit of context, this relates to maintained and community and voluntary controlled schools, of which there are only half a dozen now across BCP. We're in a very, very largely academised system, and so this sits along the work which will be going on with all the other schools who are now academies, who will be setting their own admissions criteria at the same time. It mostly affects the younger year groups. There is just one of our schools which is a junior phase, so that will affect children going into year 2, sorry, I beg your pardon, leaving year 2 and going into year 3 in that case, but the 5 other schools are all reception places. So those are children, bearing in mind that this is to set the admissions criteria for 2022. These are children who are currently turning 3. So, Chairman, if anybody's going through the terrible 2s, this is one less thing that parents need to be considering. And it will allow, it will inform the places which are available for parents when they go next year to visit infant and primary schools to make their choices about what their preferences are for their 4-year-olds to start in the following September. It really is that straightforward and that technical. It did provide a springboard for what I think is fair to say was a very lively debate at Overview and Scrutiny when it met before Christmas, which was related to this paper, but actually it was a great opportunity to move on to wider discussion. But I can say, I think, in reflecting that this paper has had the support for from Overview and Scrutiny. And with that in mind, I would ask Councillor White again if he'd be kind enough to second. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, very happy to support that. Thank you.
Thank you very much, both. And yeah, I'd had a mild element of shock there, Councillor, when I realised that September 22 actually related to me and my oldest child, who will be 3 on Monday. So getting there. Okay, great. That's fantastic. So yeah, this to Overview Scrutiny, no direct recommendations. So Councillor Bartlett, please come in if you would like to discuss it. While I'm waiting for that, we'll see if any of the wider membership want to speak. Councillor Greene, would you like to
Sorry,
come back?
Apologies, Chairman. It went to Children's Services over the panel, not the overarching board.
Quite, and apologies for that error. Fantastic. So then I'll bring forward any our cabinet colleagues would like to address this paper. No. Okay, so then we've got the recommendations A and B in front of us. So if anybody would like to comment or have a discussion about any of those recommendations, please show now. Otherwise, I'll look forward to taking that as a unanimous decision from Cabinet, which I'm happy to do because nobody's raising, so that's great. Thank you very much, Nicola. And then we move on to agenda item 14, I believe, which is the Cabinet forward plan. So, do any members of Cabinet would any members of Cabinet like to discuss the forward plan? Any items on that? Yes, I've got Councillor Haynes. May.
Thank you very much, Chair. It's not to really discuss what's actually listed there, more to actually add a couple of items onto there. I'd like to actually add 2 items from my portfolio. The first one is the harmonisation of pest control services, and the second one is to seek approval for a pilot fly trial. I haven't got dates as such, but I would like to see them added to the forward plan so that we are aware that it is actually coming through in the pipeline. Thank you, Chair.
Yeah, thank you very much, Councillor Haynes, and we can arrange, Democratic Services can arrange those to be added to the plan, which we look forward to. I think we've also, I think getting that further view in terms of, that further forward plan is going to be really useful. We've arranged a number of all-member seminars, haven't we? And we've got a full programme every fortnight up till the end of March, which is really glad to be able to, put members more in front of some of the work that this administration is doing, so it can become even more important for us to review stuff that's coming down that will land on the forward plan, so we can engage membership earlier through the all-member seminar programme, which is proving useful and popular. So I ask all Cabinet members to give some consideration to getting things through to us earlier, as and when you can, so we can engage as many people as possible. I've got Councillor Broadhead, Phil.
Yes, thank you, Leader. There's more that's going to be added onto the formal local plan soon, as we start to bring a number of strategies that are in train forward at pace. But I also just wanted to use the opportunity to thank the Overview and Scrutiny Board and the chairman in particular. I had a kind of a session last week with the Overview and Scrutiny Board, which was looking at a number of areas in my portfolio in a real effort to try and get the Overview and Scrutiny Board engaged. We're not just with the formal forward plan, but actually all of the things that we're thinking of, the ideas in the future, so that the Overview and Scrutiny Board can be as much as an overview and have input into that forward decision making, rather than just scrutinise the decisions that were being made. I think that was a really successful meeting, and thank you to the chair for facilitating that. And I know a number of other cabinet members are going to be doing something similar. And I think that's a really good opportunity for any members of the council to question portfolio holders about things that they're thinking of in the future and not just currently planned, so that we can get as many members involved in that decision-making process as well. So there is a formal part and there's also the informal bit, and as you mentioned, the all-member seminars are another really good way of getting people involved in scoping some of the decisions that are not just immediate, but maybe in the medium to long term as well. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely, and I think that engagement in that sort of reset with ONS is going to be really useful, and the all-member seminars. So yeah, great. We're certainly getting there with increasing member engagement, which is only going to be a positive thing. Okay, fine. So I don't have anybody else wishing to speak on that item. That's the last item of business we've got. So all that's left for me to do is to thank everybody for their engagement today. Really pleased with some really positive things we're bringing forward, and thank you the public for watching, whether that's live or on YouTube. Very much looking forward to February, when we've got a number of other exciting and important papers coming forward, including our budget, which will be really material to all of us as we come out of this pandemic. So yeah, thank you everybody for your time. Have a good, healthy, productive days, and look forward to seeing everybody soon. Thank you. Bye bye.